So I've put a picture of the learning pit up because multiplication and division is a brand new topic. Remember, sometimes when we start a new topic, it can be a bit scary and you can feel a bit like this little person up here. You are sliding all the way down to the bottom of the pit because you think, I've never heard that before, I don't know how to do it, even though I've just watched a little video about it, I still don't understand it. Well, just to let you know that we're going to be learning about multiplication and division for 3, maybe even 4 weeks. So you're going to have lots of time and lots of practice. And then, of course, you'll be learning about it some more in year 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So when you're down at the bottom here, remember this is where we learn. So it should actually be quite a nice place. And gradually, you're going to be learning a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and a bit more until you're right at the top. And you're off and ready to wander off into year 3. Because if you knew it all already, you could just do that straight away. And you wouldn't really need to watch any of the year 2 videos. So we're all going to be down here. We're going to find out a bit more about the topic each day. Good morning, year 2. I'm here in the year 2 classroom making these videos. It's very lonely without having you in here. And I need to make them lots of times because I keep swiveling on my chair. And it must be it's distracting, so I'm going to try and stay still, and if that doesn't work, I will get another chair. So we're starting a new maths topic this term about timesing and dividing. So on the board here, I've got the times signs. If you hold up your arms like this, like the X factor sign, that is the symbol for timesing. So when people talk about learning times tables, this is the symbol they're talking about. Now when you times numbers, the answer you end up is bigger. Bit like with adding, where you put 2 numbers together and make it bigger. Timesing, the answer is bigger as well. And it means sets of, or lots of, or how many times you've got something. And when we're learning about timesing, we're going to be looking at the numericon they're really helpful because the numericon are all the same. And you can make a set of a number. And you already know a lot about timesing, even if you think you don't. You know that that would be 10, and you know that 2 tens would be 20, and 3 tens is 30, 4 tens is 40, and 5 tens is 50. So you already know more about timesing than you think. That's a set of tens. It's a set of 5 tens, and it makes 50. Just like we've got some 2s on the board, that's 1 2. If I slide it along, and you've got 2 2s, and 2 2s makes 4. And 3 2s makes 6. So when people write number sentences using times, they think about what number they've got and how many times they've got it. So there we've got some 2s, and we've got 1 2 3 2s. And that equals 6. But the good thing about timesing is you can do it both ways round. It doesn't matter. So if I rub those out, you can also think about how many sets you've got and what number you've got in each set. So we've got 3 sets. 1 2 3. And in each set, we've got 2. So 3 2s equals 6. And just like with adding, you can swap the 2 little numbers. The answer at the end, the big number, will always be the same. It doesn't matter whether you write 2 times 3 or 3 times 2. It will always equal 6. Now the opposite of timesing, just like adding has an opposite, so does timesing, is dividing. So if we've got one arm up there and make the 2 dots, that is the dividing sign. And we're going to be learning a lot about dividing later on, but all you really need to know is it's breaking something up into bits. It's making something smaller. So if we've got our 6 here, we can divide it up into bits. There's one bit of the 6, there's another bit of the 6, and there's another bit of the 6. So the big number this time goes at the front, just like we're taking away. The big number was 6, and we've divided it up into bits. How many bits have we got? 1 2 3. We've got 3 bits. And how big is each bit 2. Or just like with adding, you can do it the other way around. Always put the big number at the front. So let's rub that one out so we can see a bit better. What was the big number again? It was 6. And we've divided it into 2s. Because we've got a 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here. And this is the way that I like to think about dividing. How many 2s are in 6? And if we were using the multi-link, which is much easier for dividing because you can break it up. You can't break these ones up unless you had a saw. You can't break it up, but you can break this up. So if you start up with 6, and we want to know how many 2s are in 6. So there's a 2, there's a 2, and there's a 2. So it equals 3 2s. And when we're going to be learning about dividing later on, that's the best way to practice it. Think about how many of the little number are in the big number. We're going to start our multiplication and division topic by looking at a really lovely book. It's called 1 is a Snail, 10 is a Crab, a Counting by Feet book. And it's by April Pulley-Sayer and Jeff Sayer, and it's illustrated by Randy Cecil. And this is a lovely way to start thinking about multiplication. And we're going to use some of the characters in the book in some of the lessons that we're doing this week. To the beach. 1 is a snail. This is a snail's foot. 2 is a person, because a person has got 2 feet. 3 is a person and a snail. 4 is a dog, because a dog has 4 feet. 5 is a dog and a snail. 6 is an insect, because insects have 6 legs. 7 is an insect and a snail. 8 is a spider, because spiders have 8 legs. 9 is a spider and a snail. 10 is a crab. Crabs have 10 feet. Their front 2 feet also have a second job as claws. So if 10 is a crab, that means 20 must be 2 crabs. 30 is 3 crabs, but it could be 10 people and a crab. 40 is 4 crabs, or it could be 10 dogs. 50 is 5 crabs, or 10 dogs and a crab. 60 is 6 crabs, or 10 insects. 70 is 7 crabs, or 10 insects and a crab. 80 is 8 crabs, or 10 spiders. 90 is 9 crabs, or 10 spiders and a crab. So 100 would be 10 crabs, or if you're counting really slowly, 100 snails. I hope you enjoyed the book. Now this picture here shows you how in the book they made each of the numbers. And something I noticed, that it starts off with the odd number, 1's a snail, but then there's like a different way for making the odd and the even numbers. So if we look at number 2, that's a person. And if we look at number 4, that's a dog. Number 6 was an insect. Number 8 was a spider. And number 10 was a crab. So those are the even numbers. And to make the odd numbers, they just add a snail on. So we've got a person and a snail for 3, and we have the dog and the snail for 5. Then we've got the little insect on the snail, and then we've got the spider on the snail. So to make each number that's odd, they have to add the snail, because he's the only creature that's just got 1 foot. So maybe you could guess how they might make 11. If they carried the story on, they could have a crab who's number 10, and they could give him a snail, and then that would make 11. So there's a picture of some of the even numbers. So we've got the snail, he's odd. And then we've got the 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Now today, we're going to look at some of the words that we use when we're talking about multiplication and division. So multiplication uses that sign, remember, and division uses that sign. So when we're talking about multiplying, you sometimes hear grouping mentioned, or people sometimes say sets of or lots of. And division, you might hear the word dividing or sharing. Now what we're going to be doing is sorting words into whether they mean dividing or timesing. So I want you to get a piece of paper in your book, in your maths book. So find a clean page, and you need to do a line across the middle. So it doesn't really matter whether you go from top to bottom or side to side. I think side to side might be easier. So you need a line across the middle, and then at the top you're going to write times, and you're going to draw the times sign, and then underneath you're going to write divide, and you're going to do the divide sign. And then I'm going to show you some different words now, and we're going to sort them into whether they mean times or divide. Some of them can mean both because it is the opposite of each other, but we're just going to write some of these words down just so that you've got them written in your book and you know what they mean. So lots of means times. So I want you to write that in the half of your page where you've drawn the times sign. So lots of means times. And then another word that we're going to find out a lot about later is array. And that also is a way of showing times of multiplication. So if you could write that in the section with times as well. Remember to pause the video so you can copy them. And I'm sorry about the writing, why it's done computer writing and a funny A, but we can't get it to write an A like this. You know how to write an A like that. It's a beautiful A. Double means times, because if you're doubling something, you're making it bigger. So if you write the word double on the times section. And half is the opposite of double, so that's dividing something. If you cut something in half, like an apple, you're dividing it in half. So can you write that in the dividing section? Now this is a word you definitely won't have seen before, remainder. Now the remainder happens when we do dividing. And you're going to be learning about that later as well. So can you write remainder in the dividing side of your piece of paper? It just means what's left really. When you share something, when you divide something out, like you're sharing out sweets, if there's some left over, that's the remainder. Whoops. Now multiple is to do with the word multiplication and multiply. So that's a times word. So you need to write multiple in the times section. You might be able to guess which section share goes in. If you're sharing something out, you're dividing it. If you've got a lot of things and then you share them with other people, you're dividing your lot of things up. If you have a big bar of chocolate and you break it up to share it, that's dividing it. So you need to write share in the dividing section. Multiply comes from multiplication, so that goes in the times section. You're talking about multiplying something, you're making something bigger, and that's timesing. And sets of can go in timesing as well. If you have sets of something, you're timesing a number. You've got a number lots of times. Goes into. Now that's a bit of a funny one, but that's to do with dividing. How many of something goes into a number? How many 5s are there in 10? That's dividing. So goes into, I think we'll write that in the dividing half of your piece of paper. And the last one down the bottom says equal groups. Now equal groups can be both, because if you're multiplying something, you have equal groups of something, and if you're dividing something, you divide it into equal groups. So when we're learning about multiplication and division, equal groups is probably one of the most important words, because it always has to be equal groups. So I think you could write that across the middle. You could put it in the middle, or you could put half of it in the top group and half of it in the bottom group. So I've had a little go at writing the words, which is a bit messy. I hope yours is neater. Remember, it needs to be in your maths book. Even though you're writing words, it's in the book with squares. Don't worry if you've already just done it in the one with lines. It doesn't matter that much. Now I'm going to try and put a link in the description on YouTube to the counting in multiples video. You'll recognise it straight away. It's the one that we do a lot in the class. So hopefully you can have some fun watching that and joining in.